So for a very long time we've had this narrative in public discourse that liberalism is a bulwark, is a safeguard against reactionary politics, against the far right, against the extreme right, and so on. And this is something that has been really pushed by various people. It could be politicians, for example, like Emmanuel Macron, who has argued that he was the best bulwark against the Rassemblement National and Marine Le Pen. We've also had journalists, of course, who have argued something similar, that we need to kind of strengthen liberalism if we don't want to face the far right, the extreme right, or sometimes what is miscalled as populism. But we've also had academics as well really buying into the same thing. And of course, this is an issue, but it's not to say that liberalism is necessarily a bad ideology in and of itself, but I think it is completely flattening not just the ideology of liberalism, which takes many shapes and forms, some of them more progressive, some of them less progressive, some of them focusing on the economics, on economics, some of them focusing on politics and so on. So already there's a vast diversity of liberal positioning and position, but also it takes for granted the idea that actually liberalism is this empty signifier. We all know what liberalism is, and liberalism is seen as an essential good, regardless of the practice, regardless of what really is happening on the ground. And what we've seen in recent years and in recent decades, but also before, in fact, if we look at the history of liberalism, many tendencies that we would normally term nowadays illiberal were actually very much part of liberalism. The limitation of a right to vote to certain communities, sexist practices, oppression, racism, all of these kind of things were very much part and parcel of the liberal tradition. They were quite often, in fact, progress was won against the liberal elite rather than with their assent. And I think we need to come back to that. I mean, to this idea that very clear in history that liberalism is an incredibly flexible ideology, that liberalism can be progressive and can move towards progressive politics, more rights for minorities, more rights for individuals, more rights for people, but it can also move towards more reactionary politics. We've seen it in the past and we're seeing it again at the moment. Liberalism in and of itself is not a bulwark naturally against reaction, and we see that, for example, via the issues such as abortion in the United States, for example, with rights being removed from women. We see that with the rise of transphobia as well, and with rights being either removed or not given to trans people. We see it, of course, against various racialized minorities and various other kind of groups that are minoritized and otherized and oppressed through politics that could be seemingly linked to liberalism.